awareness of your emotions is the number one strategy. And I think the Dalai Lama said it perfectly, that awareness is a strategy in itself. And most of us skip that step to directly try to deal with it or manage it. Whereas it starts with being able to recognize what does that emotion really feel like physically in your body and mentally in your mind. Just recognizing it is the number one step.
Siddharth Anantharam is someone who would rather be interested in what you have to say than to appear interesting. Meaningful conversations are his purpose in life. He's the business head at EverCoach Mindvalley School of Coaching and the founder of Life Circles, a company that helps people connect over conversations using games and experiences. He's also a TEDx speaker. If you want to know more about him, you can reach him on Instagram at Sid_Anantharam and find out more about his company, Life Circles, at Our Life Circles. Welcome to Maharani Talks, and I'm Mahati Rangarajan. Join me as I talk to Siddharth about navigating our emotions during this pandemic and the important conversations we should be having with ourselves. Hi, Siddharth.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
One more time. I know we had a little technical glitch and we're all doing this from parts of our house. So I'm excited to do this the second time.
Yes, we're trying different locations.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for coming on the show.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So I'm really curious about why you became a coach. Could you tell me about that?
Absolutely. So I think while growing up, one of my biggest influences on me was my father. And one of the approaches that had the biggest influence on me was whenever I had a problem, whether it was a life problem, whether it was a situation in school or a new challenge that I was taking up, he never gave me answers. He just pushed me to ask the right questions. And so that approach to looking at life and knowing that for any problem, there's always the right question that can lead you in the right direction, nudge you in the right direction, give you clarity, stayed with me. And when I started growing up, I started realizing that the approach that comes closest to that, that helps other people solve their own problems, is actually the field of coaching. Because what coaching is all about is not solving a problem or giving an answer to another person, but nudging them in the right directions, giving them clarity, giving them the right tools so that they can solve their own problems.
Yeah.
So I think it was the approach to seeking clarity, finding clarity that I enjoy the most, which is very question based. And the other thing that, of course, coaching really that I really love about coaching is it's that it helps me live my number one core value, which is serving people and making a difference in people's lives.
Okay. And when did you figure that this is what you wanted to do?
So, like most people, I think I started off in almost 8 years back. I started my corporate career 8 years back. I think I started off, my first job was in a front-end consulting firm. Life was good. Everything was going as per what society calls perfect. From the outside, everything looked fine.
Okay.
But on the inside, after 2 or 3 years in a consulting firm, I realized that there was something that was off. And dialing into that made me realize that what that job was giving me was, it was giving me a lot of experience. It was giving me traditional levels of satisfaction externally, but internally I was still not aligned to living what I truly want to do and living my core values pretty much. And stopping there, reflecting there, led me to the path of saying, okay, there are 3 things I really want to do in my life. And those 3 things are, the first is serving people, making a consistent difference in people's lives every day. Second is believing in people even when they don't believe in themselves sometimes, because that really gives me joy. And the third one is really connecting deeply with people and ensuring that they're seen, heard, and understood. And so I really literally asked myself, what is it which area, which field, or what can I do to live these three values every single day. And that is what, asking myself that question is what led me into the path of finding coaching that combines all of these three elegantly, that helps me not just make a living but also live a meaningful life.
That's interesting. And that's how it became part of Mind Valley.
So the way I found Mind Valley is pretty interesting. When I was in that consulting job that I was speaking about, I realized that one of the areas that I'm most passionate about, it was the area of education, because I know that education is a field that helps people, sparks new ideas, that empowers people, that gives people strength of voice, that gives people strength of character. And I was looking for ways and means to be able to make a dent in the education space. And so one of the things I'm really passionate about is skills, because I felt like the things that differentiated me from most of my peers at that point of time was not that I was not because I had done a very different degree, was not because I had of any of the academic stuff that I'd learned, but was all the stuff that I'd learned in terms of soft skills, whether it was communication, whether it was leading, whether it was team building, whether it was thinking on your feet, whether it was entrepreneurship. All of these different things were what really held me in good ground and made me successful in my first job. So I looked around and I said, why are there not more people who are teaching these skills out there in the world today? And before starting my own, I said, okay, let me just go ask or see who else in the world is doing something similar. And the first result that popped up on Google was Mind Valley. And that's how I ended up applying there. And it's been, the rest, as they say, is history. It's been about 5.5, 6 years almost there with them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. I really want to ask you, we're living in such unfamiliar times, and we have no parallels, at least no one we know right now that can tell us, what it's like to go through such a phase like this. For you, especially as a coach, what's the new stuff that you've learned during a phase like that's such an unfamiliar phase that has been useful to you and you think can be useful to others?
So I think anyone who says that they were prepared for a time like this is lying, because no one can be. This is unprecedented, right?
I agree.
Right. So I think for me, it was the same thing. I started off week 2, week 3 of this lockdown, raring to go, thinking I'm going to be super productive, having a list of creative projects that I want to get done, all of that. But I think by week 4, around the first month, is when I started realizing that, there's so many unfamiliar feelings and emotions that are cropping up inside me that I had never felt before. And whether I'm a coach, whether I'm irrespective of my title or my designation, I think emotions are something that is so close to us that very few of us still understand. And I think that was my first biggest realization through this period, that your emotions are like water in a pipe.
Okay.
It's my favorite analogy. Your emotions are like water in a pipe. If you don't let them flow, they will leak. And they will leak into other conversations. They will leak into your other relationships. They will leak into other spaces and other areas that you're part of. Or if you still hold on to them for too long, the pipe will just burst, which is what an emotional outburst is. So I think one of my biggest learnings through this period is, because there's so much emotions that is basically constrained in limited spaces, because people cannot go out, people are working, people are working, the people are living, people are basically working out, people are studying, people are doing everything from the same space. So that emotions,
we're multitasking more than ever.
Exactly. And so the amount of mental space that we are left with during this period is very limited. So I think the biggest amount of time I've spent over the course of the last 8, almost 9 weeks now, has been to realize for myself, and also help other people realize, and serve other people also through that process of saying, you don't have to lock yourself down emotionally during this period of physical lockdown.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Right. And so finding ways and means to allow your emotions to have some motion, to let it flow, to find ways and means to be aware of them, and to find ways and means to check in with yourself, to be aware of them, to manage them, and then to label them, actually has been one of my biggest learnings during this period. This is probably the closest I've come to managing and knowing my own emotions, and also helping people do the same.
Okay, that's a very interesting way of putting it. So when we're confronted with so many emotions that we haven't probably experienced before. What is the best way to deal with it, in your opinion?
So, I love the words that we use when it comes to emotions. And one of the words we use most often is deal, dealing with them,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So I use it all the time as well. But one of the number one things I've learned through this process and through the amount of time I've spent over the last 8 weeks understanding emotions also is that awareness of your emotions is the number one strategy. And I think the Dalai Lama said it perfectly that awareness is a strategy in itself. And most of us skip that step to directly try to deal with it or manage it. Whereas it starts with being able to recognize what is the emotion you're feeling, what does that emotion really feel like physically in your body and mentally in your mind. Just recognizing it is the number one step. Most of us are not even able to pinpoint when we're feeling something off, whether it's anger, whether it's sadness, whether it's something else, you know. And so if you don't recognize what the emotion is, you don't recognize how to deal with it or manage it because you don't even know
Yeah.
what that emotion is, right? So I think awareness has been the first most, and recognition and awareness has been the first most important step. And so for me, for anyone listening, if they want to be able to be more aware or recognize it, the simplest tool is every morning, just like you drink your cup of coffee, take a few minutes while you're drinking your cup of coffee to actually write down what is it that you're feeling. And it could be simply something like, what am I feeling right now in your body, in your mind? Do this consistently every single day so that you can increase your emotional dictionary, like I call it. And I think so that has been my uh, simplest but a consistent tool that you can use every day to just check in with yourself. And the second form of awareness comes with your breath.
Yeah.
Right, and that's something that each one of us has. And when you cannot control everything externally, what you can control is your internal system.
Yeah.
And your breath never fails you. So another tool that I've been using a lot more than I've ever used before is starting my day just counting what my breath count is.
Okay.
And for most people, normal breath counts are between 12 to 14 breaths per minute.
Okay.
So if you're not able to pinpoint how exactly you're feeling in a particular day, if your breath count is say 18 or 20 or even 24, you already know that your body is feeling a little different from what your normal is.
Yeah.
Right. So because your breath never lies. And so just consistently recording your breath and your feelings every single morning is a great way for you to just start the day checking in with yourself. And if you really enjoy this, people have been doing this with now for almost 3 weeks now, enjoy it so much that they do it 3 or 4 times a day, because it really helps them take that couple of minutes just for themselves to breathe, to really ask yourself, okay, how am I feeling right now? And just doing that brings awareness and recognition to what you're feeling. So I think that's the first step. But the second step, honestly, has been just accepting whatever you feel once you recognize it.
I agree.
I think so many of us are so
We fight it.
quick to either fight it, or we, like you said, we either fight it or we say, hey, but other people have it worse.
Yeah.
There are people dying out there, or there are people who are like have the disease, right? Or there are other people who don't even have food, right? So we say, okay, how can we feel this way when they're so worse off?
Exactly. Yeah. And we should be grateful for what we have. I agree. We should be, but still there are these emotions that do crop up.
Exactly. And for me, that has been the second thing. When you don't accept, we think that not acknowledging or accepting an emotion prevents us from feeling it as well. But it doesn't.
Right. Yeah.
So once you recognize it, feel the feels. It's okay. People can have it worse, but that does not mean you stop feeling what you have to. So I think that has been a second very, very important thing. So if there's anger one day, just accepting that you're angry. That you are in a space where you are not able to do your morning routine the way you would have otherwise liked, or you are not able to go for your morning run, and that's why you're feeling angry today. Or another day you're feeling really sad because there's a friend out there who is sick and who needs your help, but you can't go out there to support that person. Right? Or on a third day, you've just got off a horrible call with your boss at work, and you're having to jump into a household chore. and you're angry.
Yeah.
Right? It's okay for you to just recognize that you're angry and then accept that just stay with it for a bit before trying to either find a solution to it or to try to throw it out of the window.
All right. So basically awareness of your feelings, and that helps you grounded with it and accept it. Okay. What about, how do you make sure that you're constantly someone's in your space, you're constantly in someone else's space? Because in fact, there's a joke among our friends, a lot of couples are going to need therapy after this.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that? Yeah. Where people are always around, the idea of privacy is kind of diminished. Sometimes your kids are always around, they're constantly keep demanding stuff from you. So how do you manage that, your relationships? Yeah.
I think the honest answer is it's not easy. So I'm going to be very, very upfront and say, people are having to go back to living with their parents. Like, I've been living with my parents now for the last it was supposed to be 2 weeks, but it's been like 3 months now, right? And there are people who are living with, and I'm very, very grateful that I'm living with my parents, and I'm not stuck in a place that is unfamiliar. I'm actually home.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people are having to live with people in spaces that they're not used to, and so, or they're filled with 3 or 4 people or 5 people living in a very constrained space. So I think I have to first acknowledge that it's not easy. And the second thing I have to say is primarily that when you cannot expand your external space, what you can do is use means and tools to expand your internal space, which is, how can you declutter your brain? How can you declutter your mind? How can you tidy up, at least, even if you have even if you are living in a square room, how can you at least clean up that?
Okay.
Declutter that, because that's still in your control, right? So I think that's been one key aspect. And the second key aspect has been to recognize that space is we as human beings are blessed with the ability to imagine and envision, and space is such a thing that if you're able to just even imagine the clear sky, imagine being on a beach, it makes you feel those things. It makes you feel a lot more calmer.
Or does it end up making you feel more anxious? Oh God, I miss the beach.
So it depends, right? It depends if you're looking at it from a perspective. The way you're imagining it is, I wish I was there.
Yeah.
Or if you're imagining it from a place of, okay, that's the kind of space you are in. Like, for me, one of the biggest things has been to look out of my window and just to look at the sky, and has given me the mental space the space I need, right? You can't be there, but at least you can see it and bring or invite some of that space into you. So I think that has been a second thing that has really helped me. And the third thing has been energy. Managing your energy when you're in a constrained space is so important, which means when your energy is off, how can you ensure that you either give yourself the time and space to ground yourself, get your energy back, or you just don't actively engage in conversation, because what you're going to end up doing is changing the energy of the entire room or surrounding or environment that you're part of at that particular point of time. So being cognizant of your own energy has been something that I've been more mindful of.
Okay. You always stressed the need about having meaningful conversations with other people. But at a time like this where, we are all detached from each other, in a sense that, we're not really interacting as much, at least outside family members. And you were talking about going into your internal space. In that internal space, what are the important conversations that we should be having with ourselves? Or the right questions to ask ourselves?
So great point. I think, first of all, it is the number one thing about having a great conversation with yourself comes down to the words you use. And especially at times like the time that we are in right now, the words you use make a huge difference, right? So, for example, it is physical isolation. It's not social isolation.
Yeah.
It's a situation. It's not really a crisis. It is a crisis for you if you're actively dealing with being in the hospital, or if someone very close to you is having it. But otherwise, calling it a crisis immediately gets your brain to have a flight or flight response, right?
Yeah.
So just when if just calling it a situation already calms you down. So I think one of the biggest things I've learned is, when you're in your conversations with yourself, choose the words you use very carefully and very wisely, and ensure that it's serving you. That's the first um, thing. And the second thing has been um, going easy on yourself, even with questions. So honestly, I'm a huge thing of questions and reflection and all of that. But on days when you wake up saying, okay, today I do not feel like doing a lot of things, just being easy on yourself, and saying, okay, it's okay, it's fine, because you are working from home, yes, but you are working from home during a situation which is not very normal.
Yeah.
So expecting abnormal levels of or normal levels of productivity during a situation which is quite different is also not fair on you. So I think being easy on yourself is another conversation. Being compassionate, being easy, being more loving with yourself has been another key conversation to have during yourself with yourself during this period.
I agree.
And I think the third thing that has been the most beautiful thing about this whole period is that a lot of people have been consciously, I would not say use the word forced, but are having to connect with the people they lived, whether it's their family members, whether it's their spouses, whether it's their, and if time was your excuse earlier, it no longer is.
That's true.
If I have to travel and I have to get, if was your excuse earlier, you can't use that as an excuse. So even if this period has taught a lot of people that if they were avoiding either deep connections or meaningful conversations with people, and if time was a reason, it cannot be. So a lot of people are being confronted with the fact that maybe I was basically avoiding the whole deep connection with the next person, and by I was trying to tell myself that it's maybe time, but it's not, right? So finding ways and means to connect more deeply with the people you are in at home right now, or with
Yeah.
with friends, or has been another blessing, I would say. And the most important thing is the people you still want to keep in touch with right now, you realize that those are the people who really matter in your life. So when you come out of it, make it a point to nurture those relationships, because in times of crisis or situations or unfamiliar situations like these is when you really fall back on the people who are there to support you. So if you consciously are keeping in touch with a few of your friends amongst your larger group of friends during this period, know that they are really the people who are serving you.
Yeah.
They're the people probably who are adding more strength to your life. They're adding more support to your life. They're adding more hope to your life. So that has been another takeaway from me.
Okay. You were talking about connecting with your family members at a time like this. And say that wasn't always the case with your parents or, any extended family that you live with. What is a good starting point to sit down and connect with them? Where do you think they can meet, or so that it's not awkward?
So, for me, a conversation becomes meaningful when, first of all, you start off with, like I said, checking in. And for me, a check-in is a great way for us to arrive into any conversation without jumping in. And a check-in often involves when two people come together, even when you're with your your family, or anyone you meet. Starting with this question as simple as, you know, what's happening, right? How are you feeling right now? Or what is new in your world? Or what's the thing that is most exciting you right now? That's one of my favorite questions.
Okay.
As well, right? And when it comes to family, asking my dad how was, or asking my mom how was yesterday, just starting with something as simple as that, where you don't try to jump into what either you're going through at work or how you're feeling.
Yeah.
But you start off where you both create a space where you both dial into where you are at right now. I think is a great starting point. Once you check in, I think the next part of having any conversation is about asking open-ended questions where you're actually curious about what the other person is going through, or just their life. So for me, one of my one of my favorite things to do is wake up every morning, and when my grandmom's here, I ask her, "Did you sleep well? How was last night for you? Did you sleep well?" Open-ended question, and that starts off an entire conversation about how last night's sleep was good, bad, um, what she thought of, how was her morning after that, all of that. But it's an open-ended question, and it's not you just closing the loop. You start opening a loop with that question or with that conversation. I think just being curious is the second step, and the third step is actually um, being reflecting back what you're hearing to the person. So for example, if my mom says, my yesterday my yoga session was not the best, and she goes on to tell me why it wasn't her best, because she tried doing 100 surya namaskars and she was able to do only, say, 50 or something like that. So just reflecting back what I'm saying, what I'm hearing her say to her, saying, what I'm hearing you say is that you know you feel that you are not as fit as you were probably 1 year from now. Now that opens up an entire new loop of conversation. It does two things: it shows that you're interested, and second, you're reflecting back what she is thinking in that moment. And that's what in those moments is when your conversation becomes all the more meaningful, because it's not you just unloading everything that you're feeling and the other person doing the same, then both people walk away.
Yeah.
You're increasing the depths and going deeper and deeper into the conversation. So those are just few things that I think has always helped, and I think they will, irrespective of any situation you're in, they will always help, as long as you're able to check
Okay.
in, ask open-ended questions, reflect back what you're hearing from someone in a conversation, and and the most important thing is being silent. I think it's the most forgotten aspect of any conversation, which is silence. And using conversations as a tool to not say much, but just to be silent and to listen is, I think, another powerful way to increase the depth of any conversation.
That's great. Um, Actually, a couple of days back, someone told me, imagine if we had to go through this phase, say 20, 25 years back, and there was no internet. I can't imagine our plight, what it would have been. We are so all the more connected to our devices and social media, and we are in a hyper connected world. How do you think we can leverage that better? Because a lot of times, for many people, they open social media and the first wave of attack is anxiety, or I don't know if FOMO is not, probably not there at the moment, but yeah. So what do you think people should remember when they are, when it's social media, is when they're usually connecting with others?
So I think, thank God for social media, first of all, because it's helping you stay connected
I
despite
agree.
being
Yeah.
so disconnected. Again, the words you use will have a huge difference. So for me, I start off saying I'm very grateful that we have social media, because it's helping me connect with friends from all around the world. But it's again about setting a boundary of how you want to use it instead of getting used by it.
Right.
Right? So how do you want to use social media as a tool to do the things that you want to do? So for me, it has been clear that the boundary I set for myself is that a x amount of time on social media, whatever, every day. Second, the time of the day that I want to or don't want to use social media. So for example, I know mornings are my most productive time, so I don't even look at my phone or any electronic device.
Okay.
Right? And third, setting another boundary of saying, okay, if your news is not serving you, in which case it wasn't for me, not looking at it, or leaving groups or WhatsApp groups and other things that are draining your energy, leaving it for this time being, because it's not serving you, is another way of ensuring that you don't get used by it, but you use it whenever you want to. So I think that is, when it comes to social media and technology, it's all about creating a boundary that is healthy for you.
Right.
And giving it the time and the time and attention that you want to give it, but not getting consumed in the process. And it's hard, but I think it starts with you just listing down 3 or 4 simple boundaries for yourself, and ensuring that you are consistent with following those boundaries every day.
I agree. And I also feel it's actually in your control, social media. You can decide who you want to follow, what content you want to see, So,
Absolutely.
and I think a lot of people forget that. I think they end up consuming what has been given to them rather than they choosing what content to follow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Just knowing that if there was a period of time during this whole thing where you felt like you don't want any social media, or you didn't want to spend any time on anything that is not serving you, just saying it's okay for you to do that. For example, I took
Yeah.
2 weeks off completely from all social media, all WhatsApp, all messages, and just spend that time reading, and not feeling bad that I wasn't answering those unanswered messages. I think a lot of times people feel bad, and I think feel guilty for not getting fast enough to replying to that message that's been waiting for
Yeah.
them, or um, to that person who's asked them something on via email that they haven't replied to. But but giving yourself the time and space to say, okay, I want the space to first reconnect with myself, and during this period of time, if I don't use any electronic device, it's totally okay. I think it's fair, it's fine, and people understand, and nothing is urgent. That's what I've learned. If something's really urgent, people will come and knock on your door. Otherwise, no
Yeah.
email, no message, no call is urgent in this world.
Okay. I want to know, what is your most favorite part of your day that brings you most joy at a time like this?
So I think my absolute favorite time of the day is the morning. There's nothing like a beautiful morning, just um, listening to the birds chirping, listening to the sun rising. It's my favorite time of the day when I journal, when I meditate, when I do my most creative work, whether it's writing, whether it's designing something or creating something. I think it's my morning. My morning routine is the one non-negotiable that I've built, that has sustained me through most of the times, including this time. And it's my first 1 hour, 1.5 hours of every day.
Yeah.
That is my absolute favorite. It's my me time that absolutely no one takes away from me.
So you're more a morning person than a night owl.
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
100%.
Okay. Um, when this whole coronavirus thing happened, it first looked like, okay, it's going to be, a couple of weeks, a month, then maybe, okay, maybe May end. And now we are, entering the third month. And now it's starting to look like, I don't know how long this, like you said, physical distancing might go on, probably till the end of the year. When the days start, merging into one another, uh, what about the long term goals? How can they keep a steady head for such a long time? I mean, how do you quieten your mind, as in it gets more and more anxious as the days roll by?
Absolutely. And again, I want to start off by acknowledging that, a lot of people's goals, projects, things that they had in mind
It all goes for
have
a toss.
all completely gone out of the window, right? And um, like they say, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. I
I
think
agree. Yeah.
life is happening to all of us, right? So for me, it comes down to one simple question, which is, in this whole thing, what can you control and what can you let go of? So in this whole thing, for me, I've if in any situation, any plan, any project, anything that I had planned for this 3-4 months, I've asked myself, what can I control to still make it happen, and what can I let go of, and just focus on the things that you can control. And let me give you an example of how what that looked like for me, right? For example, in my case, I wanted to I run an initiative called Life Circles, and most of my events happened physically. It was happening through retreats. It was happening through physical meetups of small, intimate groups of people, where we used to do workshops and a bunch of different
Yeah.
events. It was physical events, but suddenly when this happened, all my physical events had to stop. All the meetups that I had planned, all the circles I had planned, a huge retreat that I had planned for about 15 people in Goa had to be cancelled. Right now, it brought a lot of uncertainty with it. It brought a lot of confusion and obviously stress also with it. But just asking myself this question of what can I control and what can I let go of made me realize that the only thing I can control is still giving value to this group of people who had committed to these
Right.
these these activities and these things with me. And if I can control that, I can still offer them that value. Finding a different medium to still offer them that value is the best thing I can do to control the situation right now. And what do I have to let go of is my own expectations of wanting to have done it physically, wanting it to be in this beautiful venue that I had booked, wanting to have XYZ other stuff added on to the experience. Those are all my expectations that I had to let go of. So I think it's coming down to that. Whatever you have planned, ask yourself, what can you control and what do you have to let go of, and then make peace with it for whatever goals, whatever things you had planned for yourself during this period. Just this one simple question, and making peace with it, controlling the things you can and letting go of what you can't.
And and not feeling bad about it. I mean, not being so hard on yourself in the sense, especially as an entrepreneur, it's really a tough time. So many businesses are closing down, and
it is tough times. It's the words we use, right? It is tough times, but it's also opportune times, because a lot of
and a time for innovation.
Absolutely, it's times when a lot of companies are having to ask themselves, what is it that about what we do that is really important and that can make it through any time, whether it's a really bad time or a really good time. And so a lot of companies are dialing down, and our businesses are dialing down and on what is most important, what's the crux or what's the core of what they do. Because everything else that they realize has all of these XYZ dependencies is not probably the center of what they do.
Yes, I agree.
Right. And I think a lot of companies are having to ask themselves that question. And honestly, this situation gives all of us the time to emerge from it with stress or emerge from it from a place of growth, including companies. It's about the decisions you take, and again, asking yourself, which aspects of my decisions can I control? And then going ahead and doing whatever you can to control it. That's it.
Okay. That sounds good. Yeah. So what are your plans for, or is it, you're not really making plans and taking it as it goes for the coming 6 months?
So are you speaking personally or are you speaking professionally, or both?
Both.
So personally, I know one of the things I want to do once I get out of this on a lighter note is get a haircut. Clearly, because this is the longest my hair has grown. But
your parents are not up to the task.
Not yet. In fact, right before this call, they were just telling me, why don't you try? We will give you a haircut, kind of thing. But but that's on a lighter note. But overall, I think one of the blessings of this whole period has been, it's given me a lot of time to again take a step back, to reflect, to focus on the aspects of what I want to create. And I've realized that one of the things I really want to create has been a lot more games and a lot more conversations with people in different spaces, in different settings. And so this has really given me a lot of ideas around what that should look like. So I'm in the process of creating a game that helps people have meaningful conversations and sparks meaningful conversations through questions in whatever spaces, whether you're where you're with a group of friends, or you're with your group of family, or you're with your colleagues. You often struggle, right, to have conversations that have a certain set of depth. What if you had a tool which was a set of, say, 100 questions that spark this for you without you having to think about it? So I've created that, and I'm very, very excited to get it out to the world. The other thing I'm really excited about is having more conversations with people which draw out their stories. So I'm in the process of also getting out a similar podcast, something very similar to what you're doing, which ultimately...
It's going to be called Let's Talk?
It's called Let's Talk, yes.
Okay.
It's called Let's Talk, and it's focused on having conversations that matter on people, in areas of people's well-being. And I don't want to, unlike most other podcasts, I don't want to, interview the experts. I want to interview real people. Like, I want to interview people who are my own friends, my own family members, colleagues, extended network. And I want to know what is something that is really on their mind, and what is something that they really want to speak about that matters, that the world should hear, right? Because for me, that's where the essence of beautiful stories lie. Where it lies, extraordinary for me lies in the ordinary. And so that's what I want to explore through that podcast. And the third thing I'm really excited about is Life Circles, which is the initiative that I was talking about, which is really, if I have to describe it, it's really a new school for personal well-being. That's what it is. And this whole time has given us the opportunity to take everything that we did otherwise offline through retreats and through experiences. It has given us the opportunity to take all of it online. So we're hosting a bunch of online circles every month, online workshops every month. We're also hosting online meetups for people, online games for people. So
That's interesting.
engaging my time doing a lot of that has also been something I'm really excited about.
Okay. So when can we expect Live Circles, the game and the podcast?
So podcast, my team tells me that the launch date is around June 10th. So I'm hoping everything goes is on track to launch my first episode on June 10th. So it's already been recorded. It's more about getting it out.
Okay.
And the game as well, we want to release it on the same day, release both of them on the same day. So hopefully June 10th by June 10th, we're able to get both of it out, and that would be a good start to the month of June.
Yeah, I'll be looking forward. And for the listeners, where can they find listen to your podcast or get the game?
So for people listening, I think if you are curious about Live Circles, it's you can just follow us at ourlifecircle.com. It's OUR lifecircle.com, and /game is where you will find the game. We haven't yet officially put our podcast out there, but it should be on the homepage as well the moment it's out. So just go to ourlifecircle.com and you should find all the information there.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much, Siddharth. I had such a wonderful conversation with you.
Hey, thank you. And thank you for your patience. I know the internet has been really patchy and you've been super patient with me throughout this whole thing. So I appreciate it. Thank you for your time as well.
No, same here as well. So for spending so much time.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you found this discussion useful, please let your friends know. Maharani Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher. You can also reach me on Instagram at Maharani Talks or on Twitter at Mahati Says. Stay safe.